This is Generations. Kevin Swanson with you. And Massachusetts lesbian governor Maura Healey signed the baby kill bill, allowing for third trimester abortions, moving a 24-week ban to kill the baby whenever you want to. So here she is telling everybody how important it is to kill babies and protect women from the curse of children. Listen to this.
Most importantly, I want to thank the women, the mothers, the fathers, the doctors, the families who talked about why this law is necessary. We've heard so many stories that are filled with a lot of pain and anguish and heartache and a lot of trauma. We heard stories about the worst moments of a person's life, of a couple's life. We're signing this law today so that new patients, people we won't know or won't meet, will be able to get the care that they need in Massachusetts. So I want to thank everybody for the work that's been done. In Massachusetts, we're a state. We've got some of the best hospitals and doctors in the country, in the world. We're a state with some of the strongest abortion protections in place. And yet, you'll hear from folks about some things that just weren't in the right place in terms of making sure that women and couples and families had access to the care that they need, particularly those who experience complications late in pregnancy. We're talking about women who are preparing to welcome a healthy baby into their home. They've got the nursery ready, they've picked out a name, but they receive a devastating diagnosis late in their pregnancy. These heartbreaking situations occur more often than many people realize. You'll hear shortly from a couple about what they endured and the physical, emotional, and financial toll that it took. We've heard from Kate Carson, who's here today, who learned her unborn son would not survive infancy. Because she couldn't get the care in Massachusetts, she had to travel to Washington, D.C., and became severely ill on the journey home. We've heard from a woman who spent $25,000 of her own money to travel to Colorado after learning her unborn daughter would not be able to live without profound suffering. We've heard from a Massachusetts doctor who's too often forced to tell patients with severe pregnancy complications that they must leave the state in order to receive care. We've heard from a physician in Maryland who's treated a growing number of patients from Massachusetts, traveling not only from states with abortion bans like Texas and Louisiana, but traveling from states like Massachusetts. So today, we're changing that. Today, mothers and fathers and families who experience these devastating diagnoses, and they are devastating, heartbreaking. Now they'll be able to make their own choices. They'll be able to get the care that they need right here in Massachusetts. Now, the law that I sign is against the context of the moment that we're in and the time in this country. We know that protecting abortion access and reproductive health care has been under fire. We saw it when the Supreme Court overturned Roe and the Dobbs decision back in 2022, the first time a court has ever taken away a right that was given. We've seen it as Donald Trump and Republicans in Congress continue to pass anti-abortion legislation, including extreme abortion bans. Today, 1 in 3 women in America live in a state with an abortion ban. President Trump's new Attorney General, Todd Blanche, over the weekend said that overturning Roe v. Wade should be made, quote, permanent in every state. That's what we're up against. In this moment, it is up to the states to lead, and as governor, I promise that no matter what Donald Trump or Republicans in Congress or the Supreme Court does, we're going to continue to make sure that women and families have access to the health care that they need right here in Massachusetts. We're going to make sure that women in particular are able to make their own health care decisions, not the government. It's why I took steps to stockpile mifepristone 3 years ago when it first came under attack. It's why I signed the strongest shield law in the country to protect patients and doctors and nurses who provide that care. And it's why I'm signing this bill today. We believe that health care decisions should be made between women and families and their doctors, not politicians. Abortion will remain safe, it will remain legal, and it will remain accessible here in Massachusetts. That's my commitment to you.
We're going to interact with this statement from the lesbian governor in just a moment. But as far as the numbers go, keep in mind that 42% of abortions occur within 6 weeks. 79% of the surgical abortions occur within 9 weeks. And 93% of surgical abortions occur within 13 weeks. So states like South Carolina with a 6-week ban, Nebraska with a 12-week ban, Utah with an 18-week ban, Kansas with a 22-week ban, just a bunch of hypocrites. They're okay with 50 to 99% of the kids who are murdered under 18 weeks. And they're okay with that. By the way, less than 1% of surgical abortions occur in the third trimester. And if you include abortion committed by abortifacients, third trimester abortions make up 0.07% of abortions committed in this country. So we're still concerned. We are still concerned with the 99.97% of abortions that occur prior to the third trimester. That's just where we're at right now. Our generation's history curriculum actually covers the most critical elements of history from a biblical worldview perspective. And let me say this, there are 500 quadrillion facts in history. It's a lot. Now, you can't put 500 quadrillion facts in a history curriculum for 10th grade kids. It's just too much. I mean, 940 trillion pages of history, it's just too much. Don't do that. So what you got to do is you got to siphon the facts of history through a worldview sieve that establishes the critical matters. Of course, we're going to include the history of child killing, infanticide, and abortion as it seeps back into the post-Christian world between 1865 and 2026. Of course, we're going to do that. The Generations curriculum is a biblical worldview-based curriculum that's going to be sure to include the matters that are of the highest importance to God and to God's revelation. So if you're a Christian family, I say do not use a secular history curriculum for your kids based on all the other bad worldviews out there. Okay, let's just say it. The slaughter of the innocents is a modern phenomenon in the scientific age, and it has been a curse upon human society. The first record of an abortion in America comes in 1652 in a Maryland court. Sadly, Roman Catholic Maryland had 3 cases from 1652 to 1662. The Protestant world of Cotton Mather applied the same text we apply all the time, Exodus 22 to 23, the Lex Talionis, to the abortion issue. Interestingly, Senator Jesse Helms and Senator Bob Packwood engaged that debate in the 1970s. Pro-abortion Packwood from Oregon complained that there is a growing Cotton Mather mentality in the country. Jesse Helms replied, if there's a Cotton Mather mentality, so be it. There's a set of instructions that came down from Mount Sinai about that. Okay, that's Jesse Helms back in the 1970s. Massachusetts had a single case of abortion in 50 years. The first report in a newspaper on an abortion actually came in Catholic Maryland, again, in 1752. A man forced a woman to have an abortion and escape the colony. Abortion was always dangerous at that time. Ingesting an abortifacient was playing Russian roulette. About a third of the women who attempted abortion were killed. A Connecticut woman, Sarah Grosvenor, took an abortifacient in 1742, and she died because of it. For centuries, a woman would attempt abortifacient if a man promised to marry her and then took off and abandoned her. That kind of thing has happened, well, almost from the beginning of time. In the 1750s, the French Huguenot philosopher on civil jurisprudence, a man named Montesquieu, who, by the way, was a pretty good guy and one of the most important contributors to the founding fathers of this nation, Montesquieu mentioned the crime of abortion. Briefly, he said this, there is among the savages another custom, no less pernicious than the first. It is the cruel practice of women procuring abortion. Benjamin Wadsworth, later to be president of Harvard College, declared in 1712 that, quote, if any purposely endeavor to destroy the fruit of their womb, whether they actually do it or not, they are guilty of murder in God's account. Connecticut registered one of its first abortions with a Yale Seminary graduate, believe it or not, in 1820. He was arrested. The newspaper reported about the abortion. The county never witnessed a trial in which so much baseness and cold calculating depravity of heart was so disclosed and where so black a deed was attempted. That's the newspapers in the 1820s. It's a few years ago. It's before the New York Times. So this young man served 2 years in prison and then became a pro-abortion advocate in New York City in the 1820s and 1830s and 1840s. On June 10th, 1809, 20,000 people in Reading, Pennsylvania watched as Susanna Cox was hanged for infanticide. The first law against abortion appeared in 1829. The first pro-life activist was one John McDowell, who walked the streets of New York in black. He was at one point utterly shocked when he discovered a member of a Christian church had procured an abortion. Today, 24% of those procuring abortions are Catholic, 13% are evangelicals, and 17% are mainline Protestants. That means about 65% of evangelicals are okay with getting an abortion. However, in the 19th century, infanticide and abortion were considered a horrific crime, an unspeakable crime by society at large. It's one reason why newspapers were really hesitant to report on it. In 1878, social reformer Anthony Comstock assembled enough evidence to prosecute a New York abortionist, Madame Restel. Before the New York police could arrest her, however, Restel had committed suicide in her own bathtub. She was reportedly worth $1 million at her death. In Comstock's words, it was a bloody end to a bloody life. We live in a day today where there are 15 million abortions committed in this country in any given year. Roughly 65% of viable babies are killed using the surgical abortion, the kill pill by mail, the IUD, the day after pill, not even counting whatever abortifacient effect comes by the use of the birth control pill. There's a little more controversy on that one. So we find one abortion reported in 1820, 2 reports of abortions occurring over a period of 100 years of American history. And it was, quote, much baseness and depravity of heart involved. So what about today? 2 abortions in 100 years? What about today? 15 million abortions a year. Millions upon millions of babies killed by the coldest of hearts in a society that is dead cold to love and life. The love of many has grown so stark, raving cold. It feels that we are very close to the end of the world and the final judgment at the hands of Almighty God. Should nobody repent? Bill Jack from Worldview Academy is in studio with me today, and let's dissect that abortion mentality bill that comes from the statement from lesbian governor of Massachusetts, whatever her name was. Bill, as you hear this testimony from the lesbian governor of the state of Massachusetts, the first thing that strikes me, and I think we all need to step back and listen, is this tone of empathy. Remember Hillary Clinton? I think we did a program on this 7 months ago. She emphasized that empathy is the highest value for anybody, even those that lead in the state. Now, to be empathetic about moms and dads that put a gun to the head of a child with Down syndrome and pull the trigger just because that parent shouldn't have to put up with that kind of inconvenience. To be empathetic is the highest ethic of the day. Do you understand? It doesn't matter that you're empathetic about Mengele, that Nazi doctor, or you're empathetic about where Adolf Hitler is doing. Empathetic that Adolf Hitler has been disadvantaged by British bombers or something like this. But the fact that you're empathetic is the highest ethic of all. People are drawn into this, Bill. They're drawn into empathy. It doesn't matter what she's saying. It doesn't matter who she's defending. What matters is the tone of empathy.
Proverbs 12:10. A righteous man has regard for the life of his animal, but even the compassion of the wicked is cruel.
Ooh, right.
Now,
right.
I get the first
right.
part,
mm-hmm.
okay?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm a farmer, I have regard for the life of my herd because it's my livelihood. But that second part of that is makes you go, what? Makes you go, huh? But even the compassion of the wicked is cruel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even when the wicked want to be empathetic, want to be compassionate, they end up doing cruel things. In the name of compassion for unwed mothers,
Which is precisely what
do we
here.
do? We say, kill your child. In the name of compassion for those who are suffering from AIDS or sexually transmitted diseases, we say, well, let's just find a way to have safer sex. In the name of compassion, we kill. In the name of compassion, we maim. In the name of compassion, we take away liberty. And that's what we're seeing here with this governor. The tone of voice is compassionate, sympathetic.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
We don't want these parents are suffering financially.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're suffering emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to see the child who won't survive infancy to suffer during that time. But what we fail to understand is that life is filled with suffering. Suffering is a fact of life. And we as Christians are the only one who have a solution for that is life-giving, not life-taking. Because Christians say, we will reach out and we will take those children whom parents want to discard, and we will care for them. There are people waiting in line to adopt not just healthy children, but children with severe disabilities. It reminds me of what first century Christians did in Rome, when it was a very common practice to take unwanted babies, mainly females, and put them outside the city on a wall and let the ravenous wolves devour them. These were live babies that were taken out and discarded as you would take out and put them on a dung heap. And Christians went out and rescued those babies, even though it was against the law. It was against the law to do that. They went out and rescued those children because they recognized that the individual matters. The individual matters supremely because the individual is the image bearer of the Creator. Yes, we're all bent, we're all misshapen, we're all sinful, but we have value because the Creator of the universe died to purchase us back. That's why we have value, because we are image bearers, and the individual is worthy of respect and value. And yet, this empathetic tone is saying, no, it's not the individual that matters. It's the group that matters. It's an inconvenience on society
it's the parent,
to have.
And it's the parent over the child. They're picking
that's
sides
the group.
Here. They're picking sides here.
It's inconvenient to society to have to pay for this. It's inconvenient. I remember that argument was the argument that former Governor Dick Lamb used here when there was the debate back in the mid-'80s about stopping the funding, taxpayer funding of abortion. He said, we are fast becoming a welfare state. And he's right, okay? He said, so we need to spend our money wisely instead of, he said, because those who are poor are having unwanted children, and they grow up to be on the welfare rolls. Now, that's a false conclusion,
Right?
Okay? But he said, so therefore, we need to spend our money wisely. We need to spend, $3,000 now rather than $30,000 a year down the road to support somebody on welfare. So it's better to kill the person rather than to support them throughout their life, because it's a burden on the tax rolls. It's a burden on the government. It's a burden on society. It's a burden on the parents. It's a burden on, and we have to understand that, yes, children at first are a burden. They turn out to be a blessing. And we see this especially with Down syndrome children.
Mm-hmm.
What is it, Greenland or Iceland, that now has 0
Down syndrome.
Yes,
kids.
because they target them in the womb and they kill them in the womb.
Yeah.
And this is so egregious. It's heartbreaking to hear a person who's been elected to one of the highest positions in the country, a governor, and to justify with such empathetic language, with such compassionate feeling, the murder of children. And then to flaunt God's law by being a lesbian and having the gall, the chutzpah, the brass to say that she's for families.
Yeah.
This is stomach turning, and it should put us on our faces, and it should call us to repent as a nation. We have stopped this in the past, as you pointed out. In 1878, Comstock.
Yeah, he did it.
He stopped this. He stopped this in New York City, and it's interesting because the abortionist her mansion was right across the street from where they built St. Patrick's Cathedral. Her mansion has been torn down. It was palatial. It was fitted with the latest and the best.
She was a millionaire.
She was a millionaire because she did it by killing children. Mm-hmm. Her mansion has been scraped off, and St. Patrick's is still there as a beacon call to life.
A couple of things. Number one is I'm trying to understand the worldview of empathy that seems to draw people in. I'm thinking romanticism. That there is a romanticist worldview that gives way to the irrationalism of the relativist, that all that matters is that I feel a certain way, and the experience of feeling is the most impressive thing about me, and that's why you need to support me. I think it's a because it doesn't allow for any kind of objective ethic.
Right.
So, I gave the illustration at the front of this was that, I can be empathetic about Mengele or about, Hitler or anything else. He may be doing some of the most egregious things ever, but if my tone is empathetic, suddenly people are impressed with me. And they will vote for me as, governor of Massachusetts.
That's why it goes back to Romans 13:8. It says, and this is often quoted by people such as this governor and others who are advocates for killing, owe nothing to anyone except to love one another. Okay? And they'll say...
They'll stop there.
They'll stop right there, and they'll say, well, we have those who proclaim that they are Christians who are same-sex attracted, those who claim to be Christians who are suffering because of this unwanted pregnancy. And they'll always go to the exception. Notice that she went to the exception in every instance. Yeah. They'll go to the exception, that I was raped, or it was incest, and the percentage of that is so small. Such a small. You don't make good law
child for that reason.
No, you don't
killing
kill
children because of their parents,
and you don't make good law to the exception. But they stop when they say, owe nothing to anyone except to love one another. I'm to love you. This is compassionate. I'm being compassionate. But it goes on to say, for he who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. And then it quotes 4 or 5 of the 10 commandments. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not murder. You shall not steal. You shall not covet. And if there is any other commandment, it's summed up in this saying, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. What is love? It's not this feeling. It's not this empathy. It is an act of the will based on a standard, and the standard is the 10 commandments. If I love my neighbor, I will not steal my neighbor's car, or my neighbor's wife, or my neighbor's life.
Reminds me of the Kipling line. Remember, Gods of the Copy Beheadings, the modern man who started by loving his neighbor and ended by loving his wife, his neighbor's wife. Defining love any way we want to.
Right.
And so
as
love
a feeling,
turns out to be stealing my neighbor's wife and committing adultery with my neighbor's wife. So,
and then killing the child.
And then killing the child that is conceived by that relationship. That's exactly what is going on with this. And here's one more thing that is scary. She said, a child who is given a diagnosis that they are going to die in infancy, meaning 4 years, 6 years, 7 years. They're given 4, 5, 6, 7 years to live. Okay, so let's kill them.
Yeah, that's a compassionate thing to do.
Let's kill that child. Now, you know exactly where that goes. Anybody, a 12-year-old, a 27-year-old, a 72-year-old, given 4 years to live because they've got MS or some other disease, Lou Gehrig's disease, which, by the way, you never know for sure. And you never know for sure for anybody. Some people live quite a bit longer than that. So if they're given a diagnosis, let's kill them, and let's kill them now. This is leading to euthanasia. And this is exactly what that governor understands, that we are signing up the elderly. If they get a diagnosis that relates to breast cancer or anything else, where they've got barely a 22% chance of living past 6 years from now.
Why spend all those resources?
Why spend the resources? Why the hassle? Why take care of them? Kill them now.
This is called utilitarianism. It is the greatest good for the greatest number. And that's why I say they value the group over the individual. It's the greatest good for the greatest number. We will sacrifice the individual. We'll sacrifice the individual's liberty and life just to preserve the group. And so going back to Dick Lamb in the 80s, he ended up teaching ethics at an Ivy League school. But he was correct if you start with a secular worldview. It makes perfect sense. It's pragmatic. It's pragmatism, which leads to utilitarianism, which leads to death.
And let's just be clear. Utilitarianism says that we will do that which produces the most good for the most in the long run. The only problem with utilitarianism is we cannot define what good is.
Exactly.
And we cannot possibly identify the sorts of things that would bring about the ultimate good in the long run, because we are limited in our ability to understand all of the cause and effect relationships in a universe where a billion things affect a billion other things, which affect a billion other things. There's no way that we can possibly know what could produce the most good in the long run. So we outside of those two issues, we have no idea what the good is, and we have no idea what would produce the good in the long run. We're pretty much stuck. We have a pretty lousy ethical theory here that's entirely unworkable and yet used all the time by our political leaders. All the time.
Arrogance to the max.
And ignorance.
We shake our fist in the face of our Creator and we say, you don't know best. I know best. Right. And that is the arrogance. It is the pride, the chief sin, and it leads to death every single time.
It's either God's law or bust, my friends. It's either we're going to submit to God's law, which clearly eliminates this idea of abortion. Exodus 22, thou shalt not murder. Exodus 20. These laws are still in stone. You just quoted Romans 13. And people say, well, but the Ten Commandments don't apply anymore because we're in the New Testament age. They applied to the Apostle Paul and to Jesus. So if God's law is still in stone for the apostles and Jesus, it's good enough for me. And it's the only standard, the only ultimate standard by which we can draw any fundamental ethical convictions and commitments. That's it, my friends. God's law or bust.
There's another thing here too. And this goes to the arrogance of this governor. In 2 Timothy 3, 5 through 7, holding to a form of godliness, although they have denied its power. Avoid such men as these, for among them are those who enter into households and captivate weak women weighed down with sins, led on by various impulses, always learning, never able to come to a knowledge of the truth. They're preying. This governor is preying on women.
P-R-E-Y.
Yes. And she's not praying to the Creator. She is preying on women in their most vulnerable times, and she's encouraging them to kill their own children. In the name of science, she referred to medical doctors and those who are who are the experts, the professionals who say, we need to have this policy. They're forever learning. I'm not saying they're stupid people, They're ignorant people. I'm saying that they are forever learning, but never able to come to a knowledge of the truth. And that's where we are in our culture. We have made science God. We have made the scientific method the new religion. And scientists, so-called scientists, are the new high priests. Because once you abandon God's truth, then you're left on this sea of opinions with a million options and no compass to guide you, and you end up with pragmatism, whatever works we should do, which then leads to utilitarianism, which is we need to do the greatest good for the greatest number and sacrifice the individual if necessary, and it leads to, ultimately, genocide. That's where we are. We have killed 2-3 generations of children.
And friends, the foundations are rotted. The foundation of all knowledge, including knowledge concerning ethics, science, and all the rest, is the fear of God. And there is no fear of God before their eyes. It's obvious. They will tell you, these politicians, these scientists, these educators, they will tell you, we don't fear God here. We do not fear God. Absolutely not. They'll tell you that. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Therefore, wow, ignorance completely undermining all possibility of retaining wisdom and knowledge in our present age. And that's why we come back to this again and again. The beginning of wisdom and knowledge in the education of your children day by day has got to be the fear of God. And we put the reverence of God, an estimation of the awesomeness of God on every page. We attempt to do that. We attempt to put it on every page so that our curriculum would be utterly, utterly despised, completely tossed out by a Massachusetts lesbian governor. Absolutely. It would be the most horrific thing she could ever imagine. This is her worst nightmare. Educating children in the fear of the true and living God. Well, I encourage you to our history, America and God's Providence, at least for American history. Also, don't forget Taking the World for Jesus for world history, and Epoch, The Rise and Fall of the West for Western Civ. And this is Kevin Swanson and Bill Jack inviting you again back next time as we lay down a vision for the next generation. This has been a production of the Generations Media Network. For more information, go to generations.org/media.